The last full week of April. The dogwoods have bloomed, the taxes have been filed, the mosquitoes emerge, eager for another season of torment, and May swiftly approaches. Next Thursday, in fact, we'll almost certainly see several weeks of severe weather action coming up as tornado season does peak across the Great Plains. The teleconnections hinting at a more active weather pattern on the way. The NAO and AO both trending upwards, indicating strong west to east flow. Looking at the weather map for this afternoon, we've got a bit of everything here. We've got Canadian air flowing south through the northern plains, upslope fog across Colorado and the Panhandles, triple point action near Amarillo, dry line extending all the way down towards the Davis Mountains, tropical air flowing northward, and a kind of a late winter type pattern out in California. Not so much that little low pressure area, but the cold air flowing in behind. Thickness values down to 537 off of the northwest California coast. We will be seeing snow levels coming down to about 4,000 to 5,000 across California this weekend. A quick look at the weather in the northeastern U.S. We had a warm afternoon. 70s as far north as upstate New York and Vermont, approaching 80 from Philadelphia to New York City and out to Hartford. It's been a mild start to the spring. Philadelphia reporting the latest date, which 90 degrees was not yet recorded. Those records go back to 1873. Hopefully, that's a sign of a mild summer. Widespread showers and thunderstorms across the northeastern U.S. as that tropical air flows in. We have a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms across eastern Kentucky and far southern Ohio due to the potential for convective wind gusts. However, we do find a frontal system close at hand, surface low in Michigan, cold front southwestward to St. Louis, and a warm front extending to the east. Behind the cold front, temperatures in the 40s and 50s, 53 this afternoon at Chicago, and 56 at Des Moines. Unfortunately, not finding any 50s in the southeastern U.S. In fact, we find widespread 80s and even 90s across central Florida into southern Georgia. A little bit cooler in Tennessee, the Blue Ridge Mountains, temperatures there in the 70s. A very large area of showers and thunderstorms from Kentucky into Alabama and southern Mississippi. None of those are severe. Most of those will die off around evening, but some will make it into northern Georgia, including Atlanta after dark. That could cause some flight disruptions there. The remnants will move into the western Carolinas around midnight. Then we look at the southern plains. We pick out the various boundaries. We have the cold front extending from about St. Louis to Woodward and into the northwestern panhandles. The upslope flow located to the north. Down to the south, the tropical air flowing northwestward. The air to the north has been overturned by successive waves of convection. That's the reason it looks kind of clear there in southern Oklahoma. But new convection developing west of Amarillo, west of Lubbock, and south of Midland. And this appears to have undergone a split. There's a left mover going pretty much directly north towards Interstate 20. There's a look at that action with the Midland radar. That's that left split we were talking about. The right split pretty much heading south of Interstate 10. That's almost unchaseable territory. Further to the north, tornado warnings have been issued, and it appears this storm has taken advantage of this boundary right here. That's probably an old outflow boundary. We can run the animation and see what that's doing, and that's propagating to the west. The storm picking that right up. And we take a look at that warning text. Thunderstorms capable of producing a tornado. That's going to be 13 miles west of Littlefield. At least at the time we're recording this. It's probably going to have changed quite a bit, but that appears to possibly be tracking down that boundary towards Levelland, just west of Lubbock. And almost certainly there's numerous chasers on that storm. One of the first big ones of the year. And of course it's Friday, which is a popular chase day. Far west Texas under a slight risk for today. The main threat there is going to be hail. And further up towards Lubbock, you can see that outflow boundary we were talking about. Enhanced risk for this afternoon and evening with large hail and tornado potential. The northern plains being wiped out by polar air. In fact, you can see the strong cold air advection across Minnesota and South Dakota. Highs struggled into the 40s on the northwest high plains. Rapid City, 47. In fact, let me paint that for you. There's 47. Sydney, 46, and Burlington, Colorado, 47. And those are high temperatures, not lows. And of course, we mentioned that upslope fog and stratus. During my Air Force days, we would refer to that as upslop. And that's affecting large area from Denver to Goodland and down towards Clayton. That's what you get when you have cold, humid air being forced to ascend by those easterly winds. Across the Rockies, the temperatures varied from the 40s and 50s on the Front Range. It gets much warmer as you go to the west, 70s and 80s west of the Continental Divide and into the Four Corners region. The area mostly clear, but we have what looks like some orographic cirrus developing on the lee side of that mountain range near Flagstaff. I don't think that's a wildfire. I was wondering about that for a few minutes there, but it does appear much like the cloud mass that you see up there in southern Utah. Red flag warnings across all of central and western New Mexico Saturday. Critical wildfire danger. Albuquerque, Gallup southward. That risk will spread Sunday into the I-25 corridor and down towards Interstate 10. High wind watch is in effect for Sunday. In central New Mexico, those southwest winds will gust to 60 miles an hour. And yes, California. This is a classic example why you need to be familiar with the different cloud types you see on satellite imagery and the different cloud forms that you see this time of year. And this is very abnormal. What do we see here? Well, the cloud fields are pretty much blocked by the mountains. They go right up to the Tehachapi Pass area, the coastal range, but nothing inland. And that tells you that this is going to be west to east flow or southwest to northeast. Similar situation going on there in the Sierras. A lot of lee side clearing out near Reno and Hawthorne, but what looks like upslope stratus and stratocumulus right there on the foothills of the Sierras. And we see a lot of patchy stratocumulus out across the coast. That's a good indicator of cold advection working its way inland. And further to the west, pretty prominent wave right there. That's going to be coming into Southern California tomorrow morning and producing some significant weather. This is what the snowfall levels look like for this afternoon. You can see how high they are in the Rockies, up to 10 to 11,000 feet. But as you go west into California, that drops all the way to 4,000 feet. So very impressive change of air masses as you go to the west. This area, 4,000 to 5,000 foot snow levels, will spread across all of California going into tomorrow and then into central Nevada for Sunday. And we can visualize that to some extent on the 850 millibar chart. There's the low pressure area at 850, the upper level front, somewhat like that right now. And you're going to see this gradient start to push out into Arizona tomorrow. And this is about 1 p.m. You can see all those isotherms across the state. And as that baroclinicity approaches New Mexico, that's what's going to help kick the winds up. And there we go. Sunday, that gradient over eastern Arizona, moving into New Mexico. And very likely we will see some blowing dust start setting up this weekend there in parts of, well, El Paso. I mean, they're battered all the time. And the other half of the frontal zone moving up into the northern plains, and we're going to get this kind of tail end situation early next week. Kind of a stalled frontal boundary across the southern plains, which is a good setup for thunderstorms. And let's take a look at the winds. That's indicated by the shading. So very gusty winds today, Utah, northern Arizona. That's going to be in the warm sector. The front running something like this. So a lot of the stronger winds out there where there's a better connection between the surface and the upper levels. And let's go into the weekend, and you're going to see things really pick up there in the southwest. Another very gusty day for Saturday. And then we go into Sunday. Wow, look at that. Some strong gusts on the Great Plains as well. Sunday, yeah, rip-roaring day from the Four Corners down across New Mexico. These are gusts, according to the GFS, and they could be up around, that's going to be around 55, 60 miles an hour. These are in knots. And this right here, a lot of our dust comes from northern Mexico. The playas out there, so that's going to likely pick up quite a bit of it as well, unless they've had recent rains. I'm not really too sure. But there's 7 p.m. Wow, those are some fierce winds in New Mexico. Then we go into Monday. Things shift rapidly. Yeah, see how that energy just rapidly moving into the Midwest region? So this is strong southwesterly flow lifting up these systems and gradually clearing out the Great Plains. Now, there's a cold front coming south, but that'll put some boundaries down there in Texas going into midweek, and we'll see some additional chances for storms down there. You can see that mottled look down there in Texas. That's a good indication of convection interfering with the wind gust product. The northwestern U.S. almost getting left by the wayside as we cover that other stuff. A warm day across the northwest, temperatures in the 70s, Portland 78, Seattle 71, Pasco, Kennewick rising above 80, and widespread 70s through the Columbia River Basin and the Snake River Valley. Then we head west into the Pacific. I did not look at Alaska in any great detail, but looks stormy in the Gulf of Alaska. This stationary front south of the Brooks Range and upslope flow as well there on the northern slope. And we've got snow cover through that region. Snow also through the, what happened there? Okay. Let's take a look at the Canadian Arctic, because they've got a very cold air mass. See that slingshot of very cold air surging through Nunavut into Hudson Bay. Temperatures there are in the single digits. In fact, the coldest temperature appears to be about 1 degree at Cambridge Bay, and thought I saw another, one at Joe Haven right there. But you can see that some warm air is wrapped around just ahead of this low pressure system right there. So temperatures are rather balmy 18 degrees at Arctic Harbor. Or what is that, Arctic? I'm starting to forget the towns up there. And as far as Canada itself, very pleasant in Alberta and Saskatchewan, downslope flow in Alberta, and a stagnating polar high across Manitoba, temperatures in the 40s and 50s. There's a look at that Arctic air. Very cold up there for this time of year. And where's that Arctic air going? Yeah, it's going to be a very cold night tonight. Looks like below minus 15 across southern Nunavut. However, due to this very strong zonal flow, it's not really going to come south. Maybe a little piece of it into the prairies, but the bulk of it just kind of circulating into the Labrador Sea and recurving back north across Greenland. So, yeah, not really much relief here for the U.S. Maybe the Northeast getting a little taste of that right there. Certainly Ontario and Quebec. Yeah, see some of that blue coming down right there for next weekend, May 3rd. Those are going to be temperatures down into the 30s. Montreal and Ottawa, but some of it may reach the northeastern U.S., and that is about it. So let's take a look at our forecast, starting with the upper air dynamics. We're looking at the Q vectors, the 500 millibar heights, and we do see some lift moving across that warm sector there in eastern Nevada. The main slug of upper level lift right there, south of San Francisco, and you're going to see that come inland for tomorrow. There's 7 a.m. Large area of lift coming into the central California coast and then southern California during the afternoon. So that precipitation will be on the increase. As we go into Saturday night into Sunday, the upper level lift field moving inland, then across the Rockies for Sunday, and then rapidly being picked up by that southwesterly flow into the northern plains. So you can see that by Tuesday, most of the stronger lift is out there in the upper Mississippi River Valley. Now, we do have this other hangback low, if you want to call that. Is that a term in the compendium of meteorology? Well, certainly an upper level low. So some lift moving across the Gulf of California into Arizona, so still continued unsettled in that part of the country, and then that wave, that southern stream system moving into Texas for midweek. And that means thunderstorms will be on the increase in the southern plains. This could be a tornado day for maybe West Texas or Oklahoma. So that'll be something to watch there. And then you can see some ridging, kind of a Rex block, in fact, a little upper level low beneath this upper level high, not vertically beneath, but south of that high. That'll kind of lock up the pattern for a little bit, maybe hang on to this northwesterly flow in the plains, and then things start breaking down by next weekend. I don't know, still hanging on to some ridging out there out west, so it looks hot in the southwestern deserts for the first week of May. And that's all I've got. So here's the detailed forecast. Triple point in West Texas, dry line extending south. There's that frontal system out there in Nevada, and of course the big piece of energy lurking offshore, and you can see it moving in towards California, Southern California. That's going to be a squall line just to the west of Santa Barbara, coming up on the Channel Islands early tomorrow, and then moving inland. So we'll be pretty busy in the Los Angeles area tomorrow, and that snow will be on the increase in the Sierras. So we're looking at Saturday afternoon. The Storm Prediction Center also has a marginal risk across all of the Lubbock, Clovis, Amarillo area, similar to today. All hazards possible, but there's a lot of uncertainty about what we'll be seeing as far as the boundaries, initiation areas, and the air masses. Those have been very difficult for the models to forecast. The northern high plains warming up dramatically into the 60s and 70s, but continued cold further to the east, looking at 50s from Bismarck to North Platte. In the northeastern U.S., cool air invades, highs in the 60s across New England, New York, Pennsylvania, extensive rain across much of the northeastern U.S. Continued warm out in the southeast, highs in the 80s and even the 90s once again for central Florida into southern Georgia. Then we go into Sunday. You can see this cold front right here. It was kind of difficult to analyze looking strictly at these panels, so I kind of broke it up there. But definitely cold air advection into Arizona, Utah, and the snow starting to spread into Nevada. And as we go into Sunday proper, there's that dry line. That's going to be a focus once again for thunderstorms. The Storm Prediction Center has a slight risk in central Nebraska right here. A large marginal risk from the Dakotas all the way down towards West Texas and western Kansas, so anywhere in that warm sector. And those dynamics coming out into the Continental Divide area, the southern Rockies, and we're going to see that cold front firming up once again going into Monday. A lot of the inclement weather moves into Wyoming, Montana, and the Dakotas for early Monday. And in the Midwest for Monday afternoon and evening, we could see severe weather. Actually, eastern Kansas ahead of this cold front, all the way into southeastern Minnesota and western Wisconsin. Strong tornadoes are a possibility. We don't have a risk category on that just yet. We're going to have to wait until tomorrow before we know that. That's in the day 4 range. A big warm-up for California as those temperatures surge back into the 70s and low 80s. Then for Tuesday, cold front continues advancing southeast. Large area of thunderstorms all the way from North Texas into Ohio and Ontario. Not looking for any organized severe weather at this time, although this time of year could easily get some runaway severe weather episodes. So we'll just have to wait and see. Also looks active in this triple point area. Far west Texas could see some severe weather there as well. Then we go into Wednesday. This could be a severe weather day in parts of North Texas, eastern Oklahoma, as this wave lifts to the northeast. Thursday, possible severe weather or strong storms in the central Mississippi River Valley, and everything continues pushing to the east. And then going into the weekend, looks like some active severe weather there in the Central Plains, Kansas, the Panhandles, and maybe once again for Sunday and Monday, Texas, Oklahoma, and so on. And that's all I've got for the charts for this evening. Closing out the program, in the past hour, we had a large tornadic storm moving just south of Littlefield. Probably some very large hail on that thing. And we can see it continuing to drift to the southeast, approaching the Lubbock area probably about an hour from now. And I did want to look at the echo tops. I'm sure they were quite high. Let me animate this real quick. Those are 50,000-foot tops, so nothing out of the ordinary for a storm like this, but very likely some very large hail on that storm with those very high reflectivities that we saw a little bit earlier, right there. Yeah, see those blue colors appearing there. And those high intensities are coming from large, wet hailstones, reflecting a lot of energy back to the radar. So I know some of you have noticed there was not an episode on Wednesday. Truth is, running this podcast solo can get pretty intense sometimes, and occasionally life throws curveballs I just can't dodge. Wednesday was one of those days, something just had to give. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I do try to stick to our schedule, but I'm just one person juggling a lot, and I appreciate you all understanding that sometimes things do get hectic behind the scenes. All right, we'll be back again on Monday for another episode for the supporters, and then on Wednesday for everybody else. Hope you have a great weekend. Take care, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.